Hey everyone, I'm Nick, and welcome to another episode of Learning Rust, the series where we learn the Rust programming language together. So in this episode of the series, we're going to be taking a look at loops. So last time we looked at some of the basics of control flow. One of the places where we typically use control flow is within a loop. So let's go ahead and open up this code in our source in main.rs. And we'll start with something very simple. So one of the most simple types of loops we can have is one that's basically an infinite loop, right? We can do that by just declaring loop right here, and then within these curly brackets, that'll be the loop body. So this just continues executing forever, right? So this is similar to, in C or C++, if you were to do something like while one or while true. So in this case, right, we also have something very similar to C or C++, where we can have a break statement in here, and break will just break us out of this loop. So in this case, we go ahead and create a variable called ID that's mutable. We set it equal to 0, and then we gradually increment it by 1 every single iteration until we eventually reach 10. In that case, we break out, right? And then we just go ahead and print the value. So pretty simple. One of the other things that we can do, right, we can clean this up a lot by using just by using a while loop. So while loops also exist in Rust. So here we'll do while ID is not equal to 0, so we've got a Boolean expression here. And then inside of here, we just keep decrementing ID until it eventually reaches 0, right? In that case, this Boolean expression fails. We go ahead and exit out of there. So another common thing that we typically do in a lot of programming languages is we have a for loop, right? We want to iterate over something like an array or a vector. And we can do that in Rust as well. So, one way that we could, of course, do this is by having something like a while loop and having a counter and directly index, right, say an array. So here we've got, let array is just the name of the variable, equal to, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? So we could have something like this, and we could just index the elements by, array of 0, 1, 2, 3 by using the same syntax as C or C++, which would be something like, array of 0 or 1 or 2. Well, we could do that. We could also use these iterators. So in this case, we can say for element in, right? And we can't directly say in array. And you see if we try to just say in array, we see something happens here, right? So we see that it says that this array of integers, of 5 integers, is not an iterator, right? So, we want to go ahead and call iter on it in order to get an iterator that we can, so we can iterate over this array. So let's go ahead and put that back in. And so, with this, all of a sudden we get an iterator back, and then we can go over each element one at a time. So this is very similar to something like in Python, where we have, for I in, some array, right? That would be the syntax in something like Python. In C and C++, or at least more modern C++, we could have a range-based for loop, which acts kind of the same way, where we could do, for I or for auto I colon array, right? It would do kind of the same thing. So here, right, we'll just go ahead and print out each of these elements. So these iterators, they basically implement a next operator, which just gets the next element in, say, the array or the vector. So one of the other things we can have is we can have these ranges, right? So if I, just like in Python, if I say for I in range and then I give it a range, right? We can do that in Rust as well. And ranges look something like this. So we have for number in 1.6, right? And so this is a non-inclusive range. So basically what happens is this will, basically give us something that we can iterate over, right, from 1 to 5. So it's non-inclusive at the higher end. So this would give us the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So non-inclusive, so it doesn't include the 6. So let's go ahead and first let's just go ahead and run this. So let's clean this old stuff out of here, and then we can do something like cargo run -- release. And we see that everything works just fine. We see that we initialized it to 10, or we counted up to 10 rather. Then we counted back down to 0 in the while loop. Then we see, element from array 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we could do the same thing with a range. So this was from our array, and then this one was from the range that we made. And remember, it's non-inclusive, so we didn't, even though our range was 1.6, we got printed out the values 1 through 5. And so we can even have some fun with this. So I can do something like I can call this .rev on this range, and it's a lot easier if you go ahead and put this around parentheses. Otherwise, it's a bit ambiguous here. So this basically will just reverse this range, right? So we'll print it out in reverse. So if I go ahead and let's do cargo run again, right? This time it was in debug mode. Now you see it prints out 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we can do the same thing with this iterator that we get back for this array. I could also put .rev in here, and that will go ahead and reverse the order that we're going to print things out in. So let's go ahead and do cargo run again, recompiles it, and now we see that both the for loop and the for loop with the range, they're both printing out in reverse now. So just some fun little tricks that we can do with working with ranges and iterators and these kinds of loops that are in Rust. So that's going to go ahead and do it for this video. As always, all this code can be found at github.com/coffeebeforearch. So over here we can go to repositories, then we can go to learning Rust. So you can see it right here. We've got our code here in loops. So feel free to check this out, play around with it. Let me know if you have any questions. And as always, I'm Nick, and I hope you have a nice day.